All right, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Just an introduction. My name is Jared Kingston. I'm a consultant with Apereo, and somebody is calling me, which is always awesome. All right, sorry about that. So Jared Kingston with Apereo. I help organize MVP office hours here in the U.S. and been MVP for a little over a year now, or 2 years. I'm losing track. So we got some great MVPs on the line to help us out with some questions. So I'd ask that they go ahead and just raise their hand. A quick introduction to MVP Office Hours for those who may be new, or just a refresher for those who've been here before. Really, it's kind of like Answers but live. So within ReadyTalk, we have a couple different ways we can answer questions. We have the chat feature, which you can just post in the chat and we can get to you then. You can also raise your hand in the meeting, and we'll get to you as soon as we're done with the current question, or you can just speak up if we're in kind of a dead spot, or we'll ask for questions at that point. So because it's open, we just ask that you mute your line so it's easy to hear. I'm going to be going on mute occasionally because my two pups really want to play right now, and I can't get them to stop. So I guess you just got to let them go. So I'll mute to try to keep the dog growling and barking to a minimum. With that being said, I'd like to introduce to you the awesome MVPs we have with us today. And I'll start first with the always awesome Deepa. Go ahead, Deepa.
Hi, thank you, Jared. This is Deepa Patel with Haluk Consulting, and I am a Salesforce MVP and an eSpay user group leader and the leader for the Salesforce certification study group.
Awesome,
Done?
thank you. Yeah, thanks. And the next we have Marty.
Thanks, Jared. Marty Chang here, a consultant with Solemn Consulting, and my specialties are technical development, Apex, Visualforce, and now Lightning. Great to be on the call.
Awesome. Lightning, I like that. That's great. And then we got Shiv joining us from across the world, which is awesome. Go ahead, Shiv.
Hey guys, I'm Shiv. I'm a Salesforce and ForceICOM MVP, and I'm really happy to join the group call today.
Awesome, thanks, Shiv. And for those who don't know, Shiv actually just helped us start up a EMEA APAC MVP Office Hours that had its first one last Friday. So awesome stuff he's doing over there. So, all right. With that being said, we know who we have on the call, and let's get to questions. So who wants to kick us off? And don't be shy. No dumb questions on MVP Office Hours.
All right, I'll jump in. Sarah, I work for Insight Squared. We're a Salesforce partner and an analytics company. So one of the kind of challenges we've had on my team, the API team, is making sense of some data that just doesn't make sense. So I just had a couple of questions around, how these things are possible. They're kind of development questions. One of the biggest ones that I've noticed is that, we'll see data with changed created dates. And I'm assuming they must be changed because they really don't make any sense. A good example would be a user added to a campaign, so a campaign member. And it'll be added and it'll be linked to a lead that didn't actually exist when the campaign member was created, supposedly. So like the campaign member's created date will be January 1st and the lead's created date will be October 1st. I guess I'm just kind of looking for some guidance around when users are able to actually change the created date on an entity. I feel like it might be possible with cases, but I'm not sure what else. Is there any kind of validation there? Is it limited to certain entities? Stuff like that. And if that didn't make sense, let me know.
All right, so the question I have is, how did they even add a lead to a campaign without the lead existing?
Exactly. So I'm not sure if it is like an import problem, maybe with data, like someone's data loader loaded something that kind of didn't make sense, or just anything that you guys might know around these kind of situations.
So obviously, whoever is doing the data import is probably creating campaign member records with the data loader. And if there is no reference ID to a lead, Salesforce is going to create the record through data loader, because remember, the data loader doesn't really like if you think about it, it initiates when you import records through the data loader, it will trigger like workflow rules. And guys, help me out. What are the things that when you import through the API, it does invoke workflow rules. It will check validation rules, and it will check for triggers that are triggering, but it doesn't check if a record exists. And so when the import file for the campaign member, if it doesn't have a lead ID, the data loader will create the campaign member record, but there won't be any reference to a lead until someone realizes that there's no lead. And then a lead record is created independently of the campaign member record. But then does it associate that lead to that campaign member? I mean, I would think not. I would think that that campaign member would be what I call a orphaned record.
Right.
That's only tied to the campaign, but not to a lead.
Can I ask for clarification? Is it when you're looking at these created by values, is it one person or is it many people?
What do you mean? Like have I seen this more than once, or?
No, like are more than one user creating these records?
It's hard to tell. So we have so many customers, and I've seen this in so many places. That's why I'm starting to get a little curious. In some cases, it seems to be one user, which is what made me think it might be an import, from the marketer who's doing that. In other cases, it's sometimes multiple users. I think that could be indicative of multiple users having that role. So I still think it must be an import thing. It's good to know. Conceptually, I understand you can't add a lead. You can't add a person to a campaign if the person doesn't exist. So I just kind of wanted confirmation that I'm going down the right track there.
Well, I think just to clarify, to be fair, I believe you actually can add a lead to a campaign without the lead existing. It just creates the lead as part of the same process.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but Marty, wouldn't that have the same create date for the campaign member and the lead?
In that case, it should.
Yeah, well, she's saying that the campaign member was created earlier, and then the lead's created way later.
Is it possible that merged records can have an effect here as well? Like if a lead is merged into another lead? I'm a little unclear about all of the different things that happen in those cases. So if a newer lead was merged into the lead that was created with the campaign member, could that maybe update the campaign member, or is that too?
I don't know that it is necessarily update the campaign member, but I think if you were to merge leads potentially, right, you could see a created date that wouldn't necessarily make sense when you look at the creation time. The only other thing I could think of is if you're doing new imports, right, and you've opened up the audit fields, if you are, importing a lead with a created date and you're not doing that on the campaign member and you're just letting the Salesforce set the created date. That would be the only other thing I could think of.
Yeah, so if you are, merging leads and contacts and converting leads into existing contacts, that should just affect those entities. It shouldn't affect the campaign members as well. Those are kind of separate, right?
Right,
would
they're
affect,
separate records.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would affect it only in the sense of that now that, that campaign member would be associated to that, merged record, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't some crazy downstream push going on that we weren't aware of. But that's good to know. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. All right, we had a hand raised by, and hopefully I get this right, Jeannie?
Yeah, you got it right.
Sweet. Go ahead.
Thanks. So we're doing an integration between our website and Salesforce, and we actually track meetings in our organization. We're a membership organization that houses lots and lots of meetings, and each meeting has associate attendance records. And so on the Salesforce side, it's really important to kind of track any instances where an attendance record has been deleted from Salesforce, just to double check that it also has been deleted on the website side. So I've kind of racked my brain this week trying to figure out if there's a way to kind of track or report, to pull an administrative report for attendance records that have been deleted across our entire org. And what I found is that you can't run a report to show deleted records. So I guess my first question is that true? And then my second question
the
is,
deleted records go into a different table in the back end. They stay in your recycle bin until you delete the recycle bin. And so if you use the data loader and if you check show additional, I believe you can see the object tables with REC underscore. Now it's been a while since I've looked for this, but when I used to do work with the lawyers, I used to have to go into that a lot. So that's something you might want to check. You might not be able to get a report from Salesforce. You might be able to get that data from Data Loader.
Okay. And you said it was REC. What was it again?
I think it starts with REC underscore. I need to double check on that. But if you go look into the Data Loader and click on the checkbox that says show additional objects,
right,
or record types or whatever. I'm not so sure what it's called. All I know is I click on that checkbox.
And does it look at records across all of the all the license accounts, or just your own when you're logged in under Data Loader?
No, it's everything that's in the system.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's one thing. And then
No,
the other
also
one,
just
go ahead.
sorry, just wanted to add one more point. As some of the objects offer a field called is deleted, so you can actually, if you can use the API or you use SOQL, you can actually get the records directly from there and then check is deleted is equal to true. So that's another way.
Okay. The other thing I thought about doing is creating a workflow so that if record is deleted, I would get a notification, an email notification. And I'm wondering if you can set up a workflow rule for a deleted action, not necessarily created or edited, but a deleted action.
Do we have a function for is deleted?
No, workflows are only for create and edit, not for deletes. But you can do it through a trigger, but yeah, not through workflows.
You can do it through what? I'm sorry.
Triggers, Apex triggers, but not through workflows.
Okay, all right. Any other possible suggestions? I think that's it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Those are my only questions.
Okay, awesome.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So our next question here comes from the chat. It's from Pierre on looking at my dev org for how to enable the ability to truncate a custom object, i.e. blow away custom or blow away any test data.
Sorry, Jared, could you read that again?
Yeah. He's looking in his dev org on where to enable the ability to truncate a custom object.
First of all, why do you want to truncate a custom object?
He wants to get rid of test data.
I mean, can't you just do like a delete select?
Yeah, with data loader.
Like run some Apex?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Or data loader.
Yeah, just delete records for a data loader.
In theory, that is an option. I'm actually just going through some of the kind of self-training on Trailhead, if you've heard of it, and it mentioned truncating a custom object, and I had no idea what it was. That's why I kind of looked into it. I went into help, and that's what it describes it as, is the ability at the custom object editing level to just, there's supposed to be a truncate button that I think I need to enable somehow, but couldn't really figure it out. I just wondered if anybody knew.
So the truncate button is actually in the user interface area. At the very bottom, it says, if you go to the File Setup Customize User Interface, at the very bottom under Setup, it says Enable Custom Object Truncate. That's where you enable it. But I've never really done that. And I'm a little leery for doing that. But I'm much more comfortable doing that with data loader than trying to let the system automatically do something. But that's just me.
Okay. No, I was just curious because I'd never heard of it before, and I just wanted to ask. So
no, that feature came out a while ago. That feature came out a while back, but I don't know that any of us have really used it. Have any of you, like any of the other MVPs, used it?
I have not.
Okay. It's kind of interesting that it's in this Trailhead on developer.salesforce.com.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I'm going to have to take a look at it. But yeah, as Deepa said, it's under user interface settings and then down at the bottom.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I'm trying to organize these questions. I think our next person I'm going to go to here, and then Dina will get to you. Rich had a question in the chat here. Can you increase the number of objects a user can follow, or I guess I should say records?
Log a case
personally
with your support people?
Yeah. That's what I would say. I don't know if it's one of those limits that can be increased, but maybe. I've never tried.
Yeah, for records at the soft limit, we had it recently for Google, but just 500 records at first. But you need to definitely tell them why you need to. A good business use case is something that you'll send, because for us we have a lot of records and we needed it to be raised just so that most of the users or managers can follow the records. Yeah, the limit can be raised, but you'll have to contact Salesforce.
There you go. Nice and done. And then we'll stick with Rich because he had another question right after that one, and then we'll get to you, Dina. What would be your suggestions on creating backups of our environment? Currently, we are downloading the tables, but that seems like it would be difficult to restore. Ooh, that's a good one. Does any of the MVPs have any experience with? I'm guessing you're.
You mean data backup or configuration backup?
Both. I mean, it's really a disaster scenario that I'm preparing for, even though Salesforce has plenty of backups. My question is related to both data first, but then, workflow rules, all of that as well.
So here's the thing. When you have data, and if you ever had to restore, the files that come from Excel has all the referential integrity with all the IDs in it. So you would literally have to do import one by one, one by one. It would take some time. I'm not aware of any company that offers like a full backup like that you can just turn a switch on and bring data back. Having said that, for configuration backup, you can easily do a backup with a tool like the Eclipse, because Eclipse will store all the configuration on your server or PC or wherever you put it, and then you can push it back into Salesforce if that happens. But I don't know, anybody else, guys? Like, I've always relied just on the Excel backup that we get.
Well, so what I was going to say is, I mean, if you're wanting to kind of get a full encompassing backup that's a little bit more automated, there's definitely a lot of apps out there. And the one that I've seen that seems to be kind of becoming the most prevalent is Spanning. And they do not only your object data attachments, but they also do chatter, and they also do metadata. So they do all your setup as well, which is pretty nice. And it's all you can use it within Force.com, which is nice. I don't know if anybody else has any suggestions.
You could also use a tool called DBAmp. What it does is it converts your Force.com database into a SQL database. So you can automatically write, if you have a good database admin or somebody else, they can write SSIS package to do it on a regular interval. So for data-wise, you can do that, but not for configuration.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, Shiv, like if you have a huge org, you're now like you might quite well overload SQL.
True. That is true. You will definitely have to consider that. But what I like about DBAmp when I used it is you just have to use one command called replicate, and it just pulls everything in and into your SQL. But that's a very valid point. You need to consider your org size.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. So our next person in line here is Dina. Go ahead, Dina, with your question.
Thank you. I was inspired by a YouTube video that I watched, a Dreamforce 13 presentation by Dan Harris and Mark Ross on survey, using Flow to do a survey. And what they did was a dynamic survey, so you didn't have to hard code the questions directly onto the screen, but you set up objects that present those questions to the screen so that non-admin users could modify the questions. The sample that they gave presented one question on each screen. Do you know of any way, I've got 30 questions. I don't want to make the user have to click next 30 times. Do you know if there's any way to keep the survey dynamic like that and present more than one question on a screen? I should also say that, I don't know if you saw that presentation, but ultimately the answers to those questions wrote back as individual rows to another custom object as sort of the answer to the question. So I like all of the structure. I'm struggling with telling my user they have to click next 30 times.
Was this within Salesforce?
Yeah, using flows.
Okay, that's what I thought. They probably use flows for it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're building a flow, you can have multiple questions on the same page. It's just the way they designed it. And I think Marty can speak to this better. Marty, don't you do flows?
I appreciate you asking, Deepa. I actually try to stay away from flows. With Lightning, I've got my hands full. I am curious though. I'll do a little bit of digging while you guys keep talking.
So
Yeah, I can kind of help that because I've done some stuff with Flow, and Mark's actually here in Kansas City with me. So the only thing I've seen with the ability to do that is you have to, I think, especially to make it dynamic, because as Deepa said, you could put the questions on the same page, but it sounds like what you're wanting to do is just to show the question really if it needs to be shown. And I can tell you that as far as I know, I don't think there's definitely not a way without putting it on different pages or different screens within Flow to do that. You could put it on the same page, and then you may be able to do a validation within that question to say it's required if they fill out this other question a certain way.
Now, someday I will get to that for sure, but right now I'm more just wanting to put multiple questions that I know have to be asked anyway onto one screen and still collect those answers in a way that I can write individual records back. So I'm not building my object that it's populating answers into is not wide, right? It's going to be tall. It's like, this is the question, this is the answer. And so each pass through the survey might generate, in my example, 30 rows because it's 30 answers.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you could, so if you put them all on the same screen, right? So you put them all on the same screen, and then you would have a variable within Flow for each of those questions. So all you would need to do then is just break out your creation of the records within Flow. So, for those questions that are going to always be asked. So you would break those out for basically each of the variables. So you would do a record create for for question 1. You would go do a creation on using the user's answer, right? And the variable there within that question, and then that would be one creation, and then your next creation you would do question 2.
So it's not a loop, right? It's a pass, record create, not a loop.
Correct. Yeah, it would pass through.
And I'm sorry, also in terms of presenting the multiple questions, because again, I realized that I could hard code the question on the screen. I'm trying not to do that. I want it to read the question from an object and read the questions from an object and present them on the screen together, one screen.
And I'm going to sound like a naysayer, but I don't think you're limited to just doing one question at a time within Visual Workflow.
That's definitely what I found. I was just hoping there was a different answer.
One question at a time?
Because the way it's dynamic, it's driven by records in Salesforce. Like within the Flow, I think the way that it's set up, my guess is it's got a screen and it's got input elements for all of the answers. But I think you would, unless you could replicate that, like in Visual Force it'd be a component. Unless you could replicate that component for however, say you want 5 questions per page, then you would need to replicate that component 5 times for the first 5 questions and the next 5 questions. And I don't think Flow is capable of handling that level of dynamic presentation.
So,
if I hard code them, I know I can put multiple questions on the page. It's the dynamic part of it.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm not sure how if you're storing your questions in Salesforce, I'm not sure how you're storing those if they're individual records.
Right, they're individual.
They are.
Records.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, you would almost have to So I guess to make it possible, right? You would have to loop through all your question records and pull the questions back that you want. But you could, if you created individual variables essentially for every single question, you could pull those questions in dynamically, even in the same screen. But you would obviously have to you'd obviously have to pull those back before you get to the screen. So, but as long as you could pull each of those records back and create an individual variable for each. So
Yeah.
you may have to do, you could also, do a less fancier or just a plain record lookup. But if you did that, you create your variables for each of your questions, and then you just put those into output text within your screen, right? And then you have your actual input box or whatever you're doing for that question below it, and that would allow you to, utilize the custom object, right, to enter your questions and then have the user give the answers.
Yeah. So,
and then the dynamic part is where it gets really tricky.
If I needed to only display the question based on other answers, yeah, I'm not going there yet. So if I just say that back to you, let's just keep it simpler, and I just have 5 questions, and they're stored as individual records on an object, I would do an S-object collection to pull them and then loop through that collection and assign each question a separate variable, Q1, Q2, Q3, like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you would just create a variable for each.
Yeah, and once I've populated all those variables, then pop my screen with the different display text pointing to those different Q1, 2, 3s, and then I have answer 1, 2, 3 that make the record create.
Yep, that's right. That would be the way I would do it.
All right, I'll try it.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's obviously not going to be pretty behind the scenes, but it'll do the trick.
Right. Yeah, the flow is uglier than I would have hoped it would be, but I'm really interested in keeping it dynamic like this. So, like I said, I know I can hard code, but that's only good for this one use case, and then the next use case I have to build a whole new flow. So this way I could do something more extensible. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. All right. Rich has another question here. So this pertains to Salesforce 1. So users are logging in fine, but when trying to go to a specific account or opportunity, it spins and does not display the information. If they close the app and reselect the single sign-on server, the application will begin to work. Have you seen this? Should I lessen the number of fields to display?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So I think his question is he's having a problem where if they just go in and log into Salesforce 1 without using the single sign-on server.
They log in and we have single sign-on and it logs in fine and the feed comes up and they can browse the feed and they can browse through the application just fine. But then when they go to a specific account or a specific opportunity, several times, more often than we would like, it seems to sit and lock up on that particular action. They just won't bring up the account or the opportunity. And then for some reason, every once in a while, they'll just close the app on the phone or on the mobile. And then just by selecting the gear where you can choose the environment, production, sandbox, they'll choose our environment, and then it will seem to work after that. So it's locking up on displaying that data, and I was wondering if that had been something that is just known, or if there's something I can do to make that easier on the application to show that data.
There's so many factors here. What kind of a phone are they using?
It happens on, mostly I've seen it on the Droids, but it does happen on the iPhones as well. Current versions, I mean, they're not old phones by any means.
Yes, I've never had that happen to me, and I use it quite often. But I also have an iPhone 5S. Haven't gone to 6 yet.
Yeah, most of ours are 5s.
Yeah, I've never seen that. Are they logging into different instances, or?
No, it's generally just our one instance.
Yeah, I don't. So just to make sure, right? It's only when you're accessing the records.
Yeah, that's where I've never seen it really happen anywhere else. They seem to be able to browse everywhere else pretty well. It's just trying to get into an individual record.
Have you tried deleting the app and reinstalling it on the phone?
Yeah, on several users we have, and it seems to still show up periodically.
And is this with the brand new release that they just came out with a couple days ago?
No, this is basically on the old release, but I was hoping the new release would kind of take care of it, but then I did have a user have experienced it today on the new release.
So my next question would be, do you have anything like special on the account or opportunity page layout?
No, just normal fields, custom fields and standard fields, but nothing that's formula-based or locking things up. We're thinking about putting some charts on there, but now I'm wondering if I should just because of this.
What about security? Do you have any wonky security?
Nope, just the single sign-on is it, and there's nothing special there.
What's your single sign-on through?
Okta.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's what ours is at Apereo as well. So, so when they log into the app in Salesforce, I know with mine, right? I'll log in, put my normal Salesforce stuff in, and then it will actually take me to Okta and have me do my verification.
Correct.
And once that's done, I'm fine. I don't have to ever log in again.
Right. Yep.
The only other thing I can think of is that if you have a My Domain, do you have that set up correctly on the app as well?
I'm assuming it was the security team that set that up, but yeah, I mean it works just fine. We haven't had any real issues with it.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I think of is potentially the volume, like you said, of potentially lessening the number of fields on the layout. I was just looking at our Salesforce One app to just try to test it out. Now I'm on a iPhone 6, so that may have some differentiation there, but we don't have like a ton of fields, and it loads up pretty quickly. So I would look at, kind of review the information that you're displaying on the device, and maybe if you're displaying a ton, then that could be why. Other than that, I mean, you may have to contact Salesforce support to see if they can figure out anything.
Yep. Just to add to that, I would say, if possible, if you can try it on the web too, using the 1/1 app, and just if it's issue with the mobile app or just anything general custom development done or with the application in specific. So check out by logging in as that user in Sales and go to 1/1 app and try going to the same records again, try to create the issue. If it does break, then you still have to contact Salesforce, but you have an idea on where it's breaking, I think.
I've never seen it lock up at the 1.1 app, but I have not tried the specific records. I don't think it's record specific, or at least I've not seen it be record specific.
How many fields are you displaying on your page layout?
Yeah, not that many. I mean, it would disappoint me if it couldn't handle that number of fields, but we've never really. I don't know the exact number, but it's not 100 or anything like that. It's less than 50, somewhere between 20 and 40, I would say.
I would open a support ticket because it seems like if it's happening to all the users, it might be something specific to your org that could be causing it. And
so definitely isn't all, but it's definitely a significant number.
Yeah, so then I would open a ticket with support.
Yeah, that's what I'd recommend too, because that seems very strange.
I will do that. Thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, and let us know. Let us know what you find out. I'd be interested to know what they say there. I've never heard of that before.
Just post it to.
You can just post it to the MVP Office Hours group.
I will.
Awesome. Cool. All right, we got about 16 minutes left. Anybody else have questions?
Well, I have plenty if nobody else does it.
Hey, no, if nobody else has questions, you're free to go. We're here. So.
One of the questions I have is more of a kind of a best practice around database design. I was hoping you might be able to guide me. We have opportunities. We're a manufacturing company, and these opportunities have lots of requests as quotes go. So we create color renderings. We make the scoreboards and video displays for professional sports teams in Times Square and that type of thing. So we make color renderings and we get quotes for installation that have to be submitted. And so anyway, there's lots of requests that salespeople put, and it all goes on this opportunity. So I was kind of curious if you had any suggestions on how to structure. I've seen a couple of Salesforce organizations that have 1 million related lists on the top. So I'm just wondering, do I just put here's request type 1, here's request type 2, here's request type 3, and they all just end up on a related list, with 7 related lists on the top? Or is there more of a landing page concept that you go to and shove them in that way? Am I making any sense whatsoever?
No, you are making sense. Is your thing like you don't want to see 1 million related records?
Everybody always wants a nice, clean page, right? When they don't really accept that their process may become more complex than a nice, clean page. But again, the concept is really they have several requests that they want, and there may be a way to workflow that so that if we're a high complexity, because we have very complex opportunities, but then we have very out-of-the-box shopping cart things as well. So, if you're this type of opportunity, you may need these 10 types of requests. If you're this type of opportunity, you may need these 4 types of requests, kind of thing. So, putting them all in related lists at the top of the page seems like it may get confusing just because they may not need all of those types of requests for every single opportunity.
Yeah, so my head's going in multiple different directions here. One, I'm feeling like, have you looked at any kind of apps on the AppExchange that might fit this requirement? So the reason I'm asking you this is because once those requests are put in, are there any other processes that dovetail that needs to happen?
Yep, there's definitely a workflow process for those people that fulfill those requests. There's not a lot more depth in that, so it's usually just 1 or 2 to 5 people needing to find those requests, fulfill those requests, and then have some kind of document or pricing or whatever get back to the opportunity or back to the user with some kind of notification or chat. So most of those requests are fairly shallow in that, there's some kind of, maybe we did a flyby where we did a video presentation of what the board would look like in their current setup, and that file would be the output of that particular request, and then they update the status and now make that file available to the salesperson to use on the opportunity.
So whenever I consult, the first thing I ask is, what kind of reports are you going to need to be able to monitor this process, right? Like that's number one, and you work backwards. Now, how often are your types going to change? Because you talked about creating multiple objects so that you have multiple tabs and it keeps it clean, so it's not so, so like tangled in between, right? Like the key thing is being able to differentiate the type of request and not have it all get tangled. And it's like, how often are you going to get new types of requests? Because that's going to be the biggest factor besides the reporting that's going to influence on how you design this.
So most of the reporting on the individual types of requests would simply be fairly easy. I mean, you'd have views and reports on those custom objects type of thing that wouldn't be that difficult. They're not looking for anything outside of that workflow type of thing, or how many requests did I do this year, that type of thing. So the reporting is fairly simple. It would need to be scalable because they probably would want to add new types of requests in the future, but it doesn't change all that often. You know, it's not like what does change possibly is the things that they want from the user to help them do their requests more or better, you know, to be more efficiently. So though the fields within the requests would probably do a lot of changing, I can see.
Okay, so how often do you add a type?
Not that often. I mean, they've been that way for a long time.
So what I'm going to say then in that case, to keep it clean, you might be on the right track to have a custom object for each type of request, because that's going to give you more flexibility to build processes around it and not have to struggle with just one, because the reality is we tried to discourage from having multi-select pick lists. If you've seen Steve Wallace and Francis Pindar in our presentations, it becomes a real nightmare to do any kind of reference to multi-select pick lists and any formulas or anything that you're building. So you would need just a type field, but then that would all be mumble-jumble together, right? Because you could sort by type, but then it's like trying to find things end up becoming a nightmare. So you're kind of on the right track with your thought process for creating different objects for, all the type of requests. I would say give it still a little bit more thought and make sure that at the end it's going to give you exactly the results you want. Like if you can get away with just having one object, that would be ideal. But you also have more flexibility to develop subsequent processes if you have it separated.
Yeah, that's the type of thing I was definitely curious about because, I appreciate the advice.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Deepa. All right, we have 8 minutes left. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, I do. The master detail relationships on those custom objects, I was just kind of curious, is the main reason to put a master detail relationship on a custom or a new object is that they're now related, and when the master deletes, the other one deletes, and then the roll-up field?
Yeah, so here's the thing. There are there are quite a few considerations when you do master detail. It helps very easily to do roll-up fields, but remember that you only have so many roll-up fields that you can do, right? You can only have I believe 5 roll-up summary fields. Has that gone up, guys? From last I know, I think it was just 5. Maybe it's up to 10 now, but no more than that. So what I would say is unless you have another reason besides roll-up fields, there's an app on the App Exchange called Rollup Helper, and there's a couple good people who've developed a couple different apps for that. I would use those and not create a master detail because you'll have a lot more flexibility with a lookup field versus a master detail. But at the same time, there is that possibility that if you delete the opportunity, all the detailed child record is going to be gone, and that can be a huge overhead. But at the same time, why would you delete an opportunity?
Yeah, we have a couple of business cases for that, but I was kind of fishing for, why do you use the master detail relationship? And that was one reason that I could see being helpful. Obviously, if you want to restore it, it becomes a lot more of a headache. But
it does become a headache, yes. And so I would say if you can, figure out how many roll-up summary fields you're going to need, okay? And if you go beyond 5 or 10 for all your reporting needs, then you're better off creating a lookup field and not have a master detail and use an app like Rollup Helper to roll up those numbers.
And the reason for roll-up field is basically just to total those children up, so you know how many are there.
Yep.
Right.
You will total, you will do counts, you will do, maybe if you put costs and things in there, you will roll up costs, right? Any kind of number fields you want to roll up, you'll always need statistics, right? So, and so you have to try and anticipate how many are you going to need. The best way is going to be to talk to your management and talk to your end users and talk to them and say, the first question I always ask when I go into consulting engagement is, what kind of Excel spreadsheets do you have right now? So while you're working on this, and this is something that I teach in my sales consultant study group class as well, is ask them and say, show me all the Excel spreadsheets they're using right now for the current process the way it is right now, and look at what they're doing. Look and see, how many number fields are they calculating and what kind of calculations they're doing. Because you don't want to break that process and then evaluate which of that is absolutely necessary, which of it is not. And then based on that, make a decision. And I'll guarantee almost always you'll find that you're going to need more roll-ups than not. But use that to make your decision.
And my last question that I have written down here is the best way to use to report on reports and dashboard use.
I'm sorry, what was that question? Repeat again.
What's the best way to report on report and dashboard usage?
There's a report type, custom report type. And Jared, do you know at the top of your head what it is called? I need to go.
Yeah, I don't. I can pull it up really fast here. But yeah, you can create a custom report type.
Yeah, you can create a custom
dashboards. So if you go to Build, Create, under Setup, and do Report Types, then yeah, you can do a report type on your reports. You can do a report type on your dashboards. And now I know it doesn't give a ton of information, but it does give last run date, things like that. So you can, that's what I used to do as an admin, is run that to see my report usage and delete out reports that hadn't been run in a while. The key thing is with reports, right, it will, the last run date doesn't count if it's being run essentially in a dashboard. So it's only if a user actually goes to the report, and that's the last run date. So that gives you.
And that's, I'll check it out.
Awesome.
Thank you much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Great stuff today. So, all right, guys. Well, we're 2 minutes out, so I'll go ahead and cut it there. Appreciate everyone jumping on today, and great questions, great conversation. So, thanks MVPs for your help, and
have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, have a great
Friday.
weekend. Talk to you on the next one. All right, see ya.
Bye.